Hi everyone, this is Daria. Welcome back to another video on piano playing fundamentals. I'll be continuing my series with the follow-up video on exercises from this book that I've mentioned to you before. And if you have not watched the very first video on this topic, I recommend you do that first and then continue with this video. I have a close-up camera here to show you along what my fingers are doing. Let's continue with the two-finger exercises. Next one is number 5. And in passing from one measure to the next, the repeated note is to be played with raised finger action. Keep the arm quiet. Okay, I modify it a little bit. I'll show you what I do here. So again, adjacent two fingers, any combination, whatever you like. Let's start with 2 and 3 because it's easier. And what do? So the idea within one measure, which is that little box, you have to focus on transferring your weight from one note to the next very calmly. Like it says, keep the arm quiet, right? It's just transfer. Make sure you're not doing this. If you're doing that, that means you're doing too much and you don't need to go up and down on every note. As quiet as possible. It's focus all your attention on transferring from here to here. If you have a habit of doing this too much, right? Try to avoid wrist going up and down at least. Try to substitute that for this movement. If you watched my wrist movement video, you'll recognize this. This is rotation. That forces you to give weight from one note to the next. It's like a swinging pendulum. Right? But it prevents you from doing up and down, right? After you've done this, make it smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually it's not noticeable, and then eventually you get used to not doing it. Or if you're doing it as micro, this micro is fine. Micro rotation is okay. If you can't keep your hand calm, best to do is micro rotation, right? Okay, so let's see, we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, instead of keeping my hand quiet all the time, I'm going to release on the last note. And then I'm going to play again on the next note. What I'm doing. Maybe you have noticed, maybe not. Let's try left and same thing. What I'm doing is I'm actually gradually raising my wrist from the first note to the last note. You see, I exaggerate a little bit, but that's what I'm doing. Well, very low, let's say I'm going low, and slightly higher, and slightly higher. I can make this amplitude smaller now, but I'm still doing a little bit. Even if I'm doing micro, let's say, I'm preparing for release. And it foreshadows a little bit an exercise I'm going to talk about a little bit later, when you gradually have to release your wrist. And then again, same thing can be done up, down, and any adjacent fingers. You can even do it at the same time if you wanted to. And see, I'm doing same notes, different finger combination. You can do that, or you can do the same finger combination. But don't forget to focus on transferring the weight while you're within the measure and then releasing. Give, transfer back and forth a few times, release. An important thing to keep in mind when you do that exercise is, again, thumb. Make sure it's not hanging. So if you're not using the thumb, if you're doing 2, 3 or 3, 4, don't do this, right? That means you're way too much close to the edge, and thumb should stay on the white key. And so on. There are different rhythmic combinations that they give you. I'm not going to explain too much about the rhythm. It's a separate video, but I'm going to play it for you in case you're interested how this sounds like. Or and so on. Next exercise, number 6, is for 3 fingers. And it is very similar to the first exercise where we did, not the first, sorry, but the exercise number 4, where we did the 2-note slur. Where we did like this, right? Now, again, I'm modifying this exercise slightly in the beginning. So what it shows you is a 3-finger combination that's being repeated over and over. It becomes a pattern. The easiest 3-finger combination, the most agile, is 2, 3, 4. This is what I'm going to use. Remember finger numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Same on the other hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to start with C. And I'm going to release. And I'm going to create a rest. It's not written in here. I know. This is what I'm saying. I'm modifying. First, before you do it as written, I recommend trying this. You go down, you transfer to the next note, transfer to the next, gradually lift your wrist and release. Next. When you release, I want you to really let go of the key. However, I don't want you to I don't need you to go here. Make sure you're doing it proportionally so you have enough time to come back, right? Slightly, look, it's a slight release, a little bit, because I don't want you to stay on it. Because why? Because I want to ensure that you are releasing it, right? And again, it goes from impulse up from the wrist. And last note is lighter of the 3. Legato. Legato meaning you smoothly connect from one note to the next. Same thing here. Wrist gradually goes up, I release. And so on. I can choose a different finger combination. And then I can go down. And so on. And you can see I'm even doing slightly sideways, a little bit. I'm going, sorry, slightly, tiny bit. It's micro. If I exaggerate, it will be like this. But that's too much. I'm not doing that, but I'm doing that on a micro scale, slightly and up. And so on. Once you're comfortable with that and you ensure that you're really giving, transferring, releasing, then you can do it as written. And as written is you don't have to release so actively after each, and you don't have to rest between. You just go like this. Just make sure you are exaggerating that stroke on every first of the 3. Then down. Down, up. See, I'm still doing down and up, but slightly, and I'm not releasing now. I'm not doing this, right? Right? Same idea with different rhythms here. I'm just going to show briefly. The next one is slightly tricky because it has a syncopation. I'll show it anyways. Syncopation is basically where you're placing the accent not on the strong beat, but on the weak beat or part of the beat. So it's short, long, short, 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 short, long, and so on. And on the long you have an accent. And then the other one is. And here is when you have an accent on that last one, there you can use that little bit of a kick. Meaning I will make a stronger impulse. I will go down and keep down, and then only on the last one I'll even go more down, right? So my strongest point will be, so it's almost like I'm going like this. da da ya, da da ya, da, and then up after that. I'm exaggerating again, but I can do it on a very micro scale. Left hand. See, I'm going to, and so on, right? I'm hanging my thumb a little bit because I want to make sure you see what my fingers are doing, because if I put the thumb here, you won't be able to see as much. Exercise number 7. That's another 3-note pattern, and I will explain less about it now because you're familiar with what I'm talking about. I hope you understand the terminology at this point. And the 3-note pattern here, again, 3 adjacent fingers, any combination you want. Let's try with 2, 3, 4. Start by, it says low wrist, independent finger action, and elastic hand. So elastic hand here refers to your ability to be stretchy, like between your fingers. You will stretch more than one key, right? So usually, and you can stretch more. So you will feel a little bit tension here, and it's normal. So just don't overdo it. If you have a smaller hand and it really hurts, I would recommend, if you're a beginner, to not spend more than 5 minutes a day in the beginning on these elastic hand exercises, because it's just, be careful with your hands, basically what I'm saying. And it's okay if it's slightly sore, it's fine. Again, first I'm going to try to modify this exercise, and after each group of 3 notes, I will release my wrist. And I will have a little bit of rest first. You notice 2 things. You notice that I'm doing slightly sideways motion, right, with wrist. When I'm transferring the weight to the next finger, I'm also helping with the wrist a little bit along the way, kind of to shadow what my finger is doing, right? Because that creates a very comfortable alignment for my hand between my forearm and my hand and my fingers. And that is usually what we want to strive for when we want to be comfortable, is that alignment. So anytime we have a position that's like that, it's discomfort. So we try as much as possible to come back quickly to that alignment position. It's a general rule. Of course, there are exceptions to this, but this is something to look out for. And this is something you can find comfort with. Once you lock into that comfortable position, just register in your head, okay, this is good, this feels good, this is comfortable. Another thing you notice that I'm doing is I'm placing, again, my fingers between the black keys pretty much, right? I have a smaller hand and small fingers, so I can easily fit my fingers here. But if you can't, again, you just go slightly close here, right? So once you're comfortable with this releasing, right, you can do it as written. I'm going to go down now, and actually I'm going to go with the left hand down here. Again, use that same methodology. You left hand can play here, for example, and then down. So basically I'm transposing same thing. If you have trouble understanding the notes and what's written, just follow what I'm doing. And count, you can count this exercise in half steps. 1, 2, 3 half steps in between each note. Now 3 half steps, 1, 2, 3, right? And then come back to the previous note. And again, and count 3 half steps on the previous note. And now here it's asking you to come back. After you come to E flat, it's asking you to come back. And since the left hand area is here, we're going to start with this E flat. I'm going to show you how to go down. Let's change the finger combination a little bit. It's even more uncomfortable for these fingers. Again, try to stay as curved as you can with your fingers. It doesn't mean you have to go like this. That's too much, right? Don't go on your nail. Here. And it's shifting. You're shifting by those 2 half steps. If in the previous exercise, in this one, you are learning how to shift exactly by 1 white key, which is extremely useful. And again, I have another video on exercises for beginners, which includes that idea of learning the distances between the white keys, because this is what piano playing is about. Your hand needs to remember those distances. So here you're remembering the distances between white and black keys, but you're remembering the distance of the minor third or 3 half steps in this sense. So once you're comfortable with that, you can go ahead and do how they're asking you without lifting your wrist so much. Is just keep it down as much as possible. It creates kind of a longer line. If you were to paint that, instead of doing da da dee da da da, those strokes, you would paint da da dee da 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 da, one long line. I hope that makes sense. Next exercise, it's asking you to try a different variety of the same exercise. Let's do it again. 4, 3, 2. It's only this one combination. Right? I hope it makes sense. Again, I don't have enough time to explain the rhythmic complexity of this exercise, but basically what you need to do is to hold on to it's the same pattern. You hold on to the low note. You can do it here if you want it for the left hand, but I'm just showing here because it's closer to the camera, right? So 4, you hold that note down, the one that has a stem pointing down. With the dot, you hold it. And the other ones, you just play it. They're faster. Now you connect these two. So from 2 to 4, there's a slur, you connect them. Now we keep going. So basically you replace now with the 4 finger. The 3 finger is replaced with 4 finger and you hold it. The reason they're asking you to hold it is because it creates even more stretch between, right? Because if you're releasing quickly, you're stretched less amount of time. But if you need to do this, you're stretching and you remain stretched, right? This is elastic hand, so they want you to learn how to stretch between your fingers. And yes, it's okay if your other fingers feel a little stressed. Like see, when I move the 4, my 5 also moves a little bit. And my thumb, I just don't want you to do this. If it's too much stress, that's not recommended. And you want to do your best to relax. But if you have a little bit of a twitch, like for example here, even I have a little bit, that's okay. Just try to relax as much as possible, meaning try to focus on the finger that is moving at the time. And the other finger should not do anything, except if they're holding, then they should hold. That's it for today's video. And I hope this gives you something to work with. And in the meantime, I will prepare the next set of exercises from the book. We'll start on the wrist exercise on page 15. So if you have the book, then you can wait a little bit and I will post more. Also, if you have any questions, you can ask in the comments. I'll do my best to answer. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more videos. Bye.